So if we're clear to go, welcome to the conversation with Prasad Yalamanchi, founder of Lead Semantics. Prasad, can you tell us a little bit more about Lead Semantics?
Thank you, Joaquin. Welcome, Ezra. Thanks for joining us in this conversation. As Joaquin said, I'm Prasad Yalamanchi, founder, CEO of Lead Semantics. Lead Semantics is a language and knowledge solutions platform developer. And the particular product is Text Distill. And we have developed it with a team of about 20 plus NLP and AI engineers that are spread in US and India. And the product is into the market right now.
Ezra, pleasure to have you here as well. Could you tell us a little bit more about your title and what you do with Dow Jones?
Sure, Joaquin. Yeah, so I am one of the data and analytics solution specialists at Dow Jones. So we're supplying the data to Lead Semantics to analyze this. One of our flagship products at Dow Jones is a global news database called Factiva. And what customers use our data for is to understand events in the world and how they can pose either opportunities or risks to their business.
So in today's conversation, we're going to be focusing on the integration of Text Distill into the Dow Jones Factiva, the news and data archive service. So my understanding is that this integration has resulted in a knowledge graph-based search and analytics platform. Do you want to tell me a little bit more about that, Prasad?
Yeah. So Text Distill, as I was saying, is a language and knowledge platform targeting the unstructured data. The problem with unstructured data is that it cannot be processed with regular software processes. In order for regular software to make use of this unstructured data, which is largely text, it would have to have some kind of a structure that software can take advantage of. And Text Distill does exactly that. It imposes a structure, and the structure itself results in a graph of facts that are extracted from the narrative text of the content. And so the graph is a wonderful structure that allows for all kinds of access. You can literally traverse the graph to get access to different parts of the graph, leading to conclusions that may not be available if the data were to be in its normal resident textual format.
So Ezra, have you previously explored other solutions or other things in this space? Can you tell us a little bit more about what you were looking for when you initially made contact with Lead Semantics?
Sure. So because we sell the raw news data, making sense of it is always very difficult. So in the past, you would just hire very high-paid human analysts to actually physically read the news and then try to make some sense of it. Many of our customers, once they want to programmatically do this in a machine system, making sense of the news is very difficult. And to get to, like I said before, understanding the risks and the opportunities to your business. So taking a large corpus of news and then distilling it down to those risks and opportunities can be quite a daunting task. Text Distill helps do that very well. So that's why we feed the data into Text Distill to help customers understand those risks and opportunities with a much shorter development cycle.
What is the importance of having timely observations on the news? How does that help your end customers, navigate risks or opportunities in their end?
Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of different places that you get information about something. You can look at filings, you could look at accounts receivables, you could look at your customer list, you could look at all sorts of different places. But for events in the world, you kind of can look to social media, but you're not sure if it's really accurate or not. But really, news is the go-to place for understanding events in the world. So for example, if you're an importer and exporter and you need to understand what is going on with legislation or import and export tariffs as they happen, or if you want to understand what your competitors are doing, or new product announcements, or legal issues, or facility openings, or layoffs, or bankruptcies, those types of things are captured in the news. So if those are the types of events that you're interested in, how they are an opportunity or risk to your business, the news is where you look.
That's interesting. Prasad, is there anything that you want to add to that, particularly with the capabilities of Texas still?
Yeah, I mean, to add to Ezra's point, I mean, it's very well said there. All these events, as they are flowing through the news, capturing the news to process it would be the ideal time, because normally these events eventually will make their way into these, quarterly reports and things like that. But by then it's already stale, and almost all of the time, you're missing the opportunity or the risk even. So in that sense, processing this text at the time that it is available to you is the ideal time. If you have the heads up, if you are able to do it. Up until now, the technology was not there as easily as it is available today, and as practical as it is in text distill, that we are able to actually capture and tap all this information right at the source in an actionable format.
So, you're both talking about being able to capture entity updates around your end customers. They want to stay abreast, regulatory compliance, new laws, anything that may impact their business, or anything that they can capitalize on as a consequence of timely news. What are some of the data and copyright issues that come along when you start scanning for the timely data?
That's a really good question. So the copyright is really the hardest part of all of this. So for example, we have about 10,000 news sources in Factiva. We had to go to 10,000 different publishers and negotiate with them, because it is taking their intellectual property and you're downloading it and you're putting it on their, their copyrighted content on your system. How are you going to use that? How do you stay in compliance with that? So my experience is a lot of the data scientists that I've worked with, they don't really understand copyright probably as well as they should. And a lot of them start out by saying, well, we could just go to the web and we could screen scrape stuff. And that is a huge copyright violation right there. So what we've done is, with our data, we've already included all that. We've done the negotiations with all of the publishers. We've baked that into the price of the actual price of the data. So once you receive the data set, all of that is taken care of.
So now a follow-up question to that is, how do you verify the source of where you're getting that information?
Sure. So, I mean, we actually have contracts directly with these 10,000 publishers. So they actually send us the content right away. And there are millions of publishers in the world. But what we did is we went to our Wall Street Journal editorial desk and we said, what are the top publications in the world that actually drive business and make a business difference? And so we limited that to those 10,000. And that includes 203 countries and 28 different languages. So it is a very global database. It's a very multilingual database, but we've kind of vetted it. So we're including the top the top publications that capture the events that actually influence business.
So previously we mentioned in the past, there were human elements, human agents that were reading through, taking notes, analyzing, giving recommendations based on timely news. In this case, you're saying that we have text to still acting as that agent that is consuming information timely as it's being generated within the 10,000 publishers. Now, what happens between the consumption of the data and the way that it's presented to the end user? Prasad, do you want to tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So I want to clarify a couple of things. You kind of put a lot of it in the question that you had. Part of it is that Factiva Analytics comes with plenty of analytics already on the text. The content of the news articles. They give industry codes, they give region codes, besides all the usual things like the language and things like that. Importantly, it has event codes as well. You can detect certain events and so on. Ezra can add to that a little bit. Maybe I will let Ezra speak to that, and then I'll pick up from where he would
Sure.
leave off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a good analogy is imagine if Lead Semantics built houses. Rather than saying, hey, Prasad, go into the forest and cut down some wood so you can build a house, we're the lumber company. So we went into the forest, we cut down the wood, we made 2x4s and 4x4s and plywood and so on and so forth. And we packaged it up very well. So now Lead Semantics can ingest that and make sense of it. So an example is we read every article. We actually have our own processing that we pre-process every single article, and we read it and we say, is it about a merger and acquisition? If so, code it as M&A. Is it about a bankruptcy? And we have thousands of codes for regions of the world, industries, companies, subjects. So for example, if a human were reading an article, they could probably pretty easily say, this is an opinion piece. But from a machine standpoint, that is very hard to do. We actually, one of our subject codes is opinion pieces. So we tag that article as opinion. So when Lead Semantic gets it, if they say, we don't want opinion pieces, they can just say, exclude any article with that code. So we've packaged everything up very well. So out of the, billions of articles that we have, everything's a garbage in, garbage out exercise. We can already, using our codes, we can really shrink that down to the tens of thousands of articles that are actually relative, that are actually important to the exercise at hand. And then we pass that off to Lead Semantics, and they kind of replace, if the human is reading a bunch of articles and trying to make sense out of it, that's where they pick up.
Yep. Yep, that's exactly, so now I can piggyback on that answer, Joaquin. So we are getting this, highly, corral data that is narrow to the, area that we are interested in. And then these are the articles, so whittled down from about 1 million articles or so, whatever these 100,000, 30,000, 40,000 that are specific to the area that you are looking for. Now the content within these, tens of thousands of articles is now we need to analyze for the semantics and, all the keywords that are, driven by, what you're looking for. But you need to understand the semantics that are kind of, couching these words that you're looking for. And then you understand that and you elaborate on the relationships and produce the facts that are finally ending up with a knowledge graph that supports the novel searches that we are talking about.
So I have to ask, what is the value add? So you already have a comprehensive system of classifying and filtering out documents. Prasad builds the houses. What is the value add in building the house?
I will take a shot at it. The real, so once the content, see, there is still reading to be done on these whittled down, narrow set of articles to get the real full gist of it. Much like a human being, when you read, you really understand this particular event has happened, but there are so many other attendant things that are related to that event that are, dealt with in the narrative of the text that is surrounding the event that is detected, right? All of that still needs to be addressed, and that will really add value to how quickly you can make a decision or draw a conclusion. And that's what text distill adds on top of Factiva. Ezra?
Yeah, no, and I think a good example is, even though we've whittled down all the articles, then imagine if you had a human read them all and they read maybe like 50 articles and they said, company A is partnering with company B, spending this much money to ensure to do a carbon capture program to reduce their carbon footprint by X amount. That still takes a human to read 50 articles, make notes, draw all of those conclusions. With Lead Semantics, it performs that programmatically.
Absolutely. I mean, I mean, you literally described our product for us, Ezra. Thank you for that. That's exactly across these documents, even as Ezra said, when all that help from, Factiva Analytics brings you down to the core, very narrow set of documents. So you didn't have to read all this chaff and, all that. Within those articles, humans still would have to read and, understand all this, different relationships that they exist. And Ezra clearly mentioned, one of these very interesting examples, like company A investing in company B, and then B kind of company B going on to, invest that to reduce carbon capture. These two propositions, if you will, you can't expect them to be in the same article. They can be in multiple articles even. And so text distill, with all the knowledge graph underpinnings and the semantics underpinning connects all these, interrelationships and the entities that may lie in this, whittled down corpus, and then brings you out the final answer.
So in the context of this relationship, you're really bringing an order of magnitude of value of what humans are capable as single agents. I would imagine they require context, training. They would have to have time allotted to process the information. Not only do they have to read, they also have to make associations. So I wouldn't even know how to quantify the improvement from what existed previous to what it is now. But do you guys want to take a shot at quantifying or illustrating
Sure.
the performance gains?
Yeah, so it's not necessarily just the performance gains, but it's something that's repeatable. So if you, I mean, to have a human do this, they're a very expensive human. They're very highly trained. They're a subject matter expert. They're very good at doing research. But once I set up a system like this, it can constantly run. And so we can constantly monitor all of these things that are risks or opportunities to the business. So it's a much more scalable model. And the fact that a human can only read so much, rather than reading 50 articles, we can cover 500 articles or 5,000 articles or so on. So it's sort of being able to expand your ability to not only find a needle in a much bigger haystack, but it's also to programmatically keep that running on a regular basis at a much lower cost.
Absolutely. If I may, I will add to, that's exactly what, the value will be. One point I would also add is, you can curate the knowledge that is extracted from these articles from prior sessions and, forever. I mean, you can curate, you can integrate it with other knowledge graphs or knowledge that you may have in your enterprise. And that way it continues to add value to your, decision environment in an enterprise.
So I want to take a step back and really understand that there's this problem where you have information and it's fresh and you need to make relationships. Where else can this be applied? What are other use cases that you can think of that would be resolved by text to still?
I'm supposing you're asking me.
Yes. Well, if you want to take Ezra,
I'll take a stab at that.
Take a shot at it. Yeah.
So people have used our data to figure out there was this viral outbreak that turned out to be COVID. They use the data militaries use it to understand political unrest and terrorism events around the world. Large consumer products companies want to understand what their competitors are doing in different regions of the world. So it really can be used for a lot of different things. The common thing about with lead semantics, it really doesn't, it is not designed for one industry or one topic. So by taking the news, we can distill it down to an industry or a topic, and then lead semantic can then very quickly go through all of those articles and understand what the trends are that we're looking for. So really anything that's captured in the news is a good candidate for this, and the use cases are all over the map. Now there are some things that are not captured in the news very well. Even though we have earnings calls, we're not, it's that would be different than analyzing financial statements or stock trades or stock prices. This is news. This is not static information. So a lot of times an organization they'd look at the static data information and they would complement that with the eventful news information to come up with an answer.
Yep. Yeah. Again, to add to Ezra's, I mean, everything what Ezra said is accurate and it's correct. The way, I mean, I'll just give a little bit of a technical, just one level down, how text distill addresses different domains. Because news happens on all verticals, life happens in all areas, all that. And so many of which will not be of the same domain as we, encoded in computers and so on. So how, a particular news, probably if it is related to kind of entertainment, let's say, or maybe it is like a product released by biotechnology companies, maybe it is political situations and so on. Each one is, dealt with in a specific domain, specific manner by an ontology that, targets that. Ontology captures the schema of the general elements that are, or concepts that are, that kind of address that particular knowledge in that domain. And that's how we are able to get to the very detailed aspects of all the semantics that are involved in the narrative text, be that in the news. That's how we are able to capture, the very granular knowledge from, flowing text of any domain, literally.
I have to ask if this problem has been such a valuable addition to your infrastructure, and it has such a wide application to your customers. Why hasn't it been solved before? What have been the difficulties alongside that?
Sure, I'll take a stab at that. So this is something that's still evolving. It's still pretty new. Most of the data scientists that I deal with, they're very used to dealing with structured data, but the unstructured data is so much more complex, and it really requires a different tool set and different methodologies to do that. Like when you have structured data, you have this company made this amount of money this year, this company made this amount of money this year, this company made, that's pretty straightforward. But when you're dealing with unstructured data, maybe if you use something, you say, well, let's just look at the headline in the lead paragraph and not the full text. Maybe we'll get a better signal that way. And there's all these little tricks and different ways you look at unstructured data to figure out how to get an accurate answer out of it. And one of the biggest appeals of Lead Semantic is we deal with many customers who are trying to do this on their own, and they're really struggling with it because working with unstructured text and especially understanding how news is reported and how it actually affects the business world, it's difficult. With Lead Semantics, a lot of so taking lots of articles and making sense out of them, many customers, that's still a challenge today, and we're not familiar with anybody who has the out of the box perfect solution. There may be one in years to come, but there isn't one today. And Lead Semantics offers a very good solution today that does this.
So what's the secret sauce? How were you able to resolve this very difficult problem?
Well, I mean, to Ezra's point, so the timing is so perfect for a company like Lead Semantics to kind of really come on to the stage and showcase what we did. We are literally standing on the giants of of the technology world, like Google's and Microsoft's and OpenAI and all this large language models and all this technology that has come up. And interestingly enough, our team had background in semantics, which is what a lot of these language-oriented solutions kind of have skipped all along. It is academically proven technology, but it is academic and it is long-standing. It is mathematically proven. The semantic technology I'm talking about, it has World Wide Web standards, but it seemed like it is some yesterday's technology. That's how people kind of deal with it. The focus is on large language models and all of that. And of course, large language models have solved a certain problem, a very important problem, stellar problem, but that still leaves the knowledge part of it untouched in a manner that leaves out a certain area for knowledge and semantics technology to solve.
I
And we are able to bring these two things together in one single platform, and that is exactly the magic sauce for our being able to bring out this solution out of the box.
if there's I would like to unpack that a little bit. So you mentioned ontologies, you mentioned knowledge graph, you mentioned semantics. Those are very loaded words that anybody watching this, listening to this, may not be familiar with. Would you be able to open that up a little bit, just in layman's terms, so that we can have a better understanding?
Yeah, I'll be quick on it. This is so as you rightly said, so we are extracting the knowledge. See, language and knowledge are two sides of the same coin. That is literally the premise on which our company was founded. Language and knowledge are two sides of the same coin. So wherever language is there, there is knowledge to be dug out, extracted, had out of this language. So whenever we speak, we are speaking to communicate knowledge at the heart of it. So, and language is everywhere, and text is everywhere, and news is text, and news has language, and language has knowledge. And so that's how it is contextual for us. Now, language and knowledge, the language side of it is the way that you encode knowledge onto it to communicate, right? And so how you extract it, that is where semantic technology comes out. Semantic technology has the underpinnings and the techniques to extract the knowledge out of a string of text, and so you need to put it together to kind of extract the knowledge that is intended by the the originator of the language in this case. And that's how, when you bring these two things together, understanding of the language and the semantics, you are able to produce the knowledge that was intended to begin with on the folks that have originally put together the language.
Language is such a complicated vessel. It contains so much meaning. So can you tell me a little bit about how lead semantics handles language? I mean, there's ESG, there's finance, there's insurance, there's manufacturing, life science.
Yeah,
language affects all that, but it's specific to a particular context. So
right.
how do you handle that complexity?
So again, I will go back to the language and knowledge being two sides of the same coin. So we see language everywhere, right? The language came into being because there was knowledge to be communicated. That is that is our hope, that there is knowledge in the language that you're dealing with. And now how you break it down, with the high fidelity and all of those things come in, and that's where you use the techniques. And what language to use, what domain aspects to communicate is, how humans have, evolved. I mean, I don't want to veer off too far. For any given domain, we have established a set of terminologies and vocabularies. In the case of corporate world, we know a company and an organization, a facility, a manufacturing, all these vocabularies kind of, guide, how you communicate related to that domain. And so one of the ways that you can, bring out the meaning that is business language, for example, would be to understand these vocabularies, through synonyms, and, that's where the semantics comes in.
So you're somehow able to gather all the relevant vocabulary, all the relevant words that make up a particular context, and enrich the capability of sorting and making sense of this unstructured data. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. And that's where the ontologies come in. So we take a domain, and ontology is like literally a schema of how the essential concepts of that domain interrelate with each other. Not only at the domain level, but then ontology also, the science of ontology gives you the depth of how to constrain these, objects so that they are valid. Because biggest problem is to demarcate an identity, demarcate a particular concept that it does not go overflow these boundaries of, what you find, so all those boundaries are made possible through the ontology. And so that is part of the semantic science as well.
So Ezra, I have to ask, out of all the options you've had in the market, I'm sure you shopped around, you looked for other solutions. Why did you end up picking Lead Semantics?
Well, we actually work with many different partners, and some of them have better subject matter domain knowledge in certain industries and so on and so forth. So for example, we work with certain partners who specialize in military defense work because there's a lot of acronyms that are very unique to military defense and government work. But with Lead Semantics, our biggest challenge was we encounter customers who are looking to put together projects and use our news to do it, but their success rate is not very high because they don't, for them in-house to do what Lead Semantics has already done would be extremely expensive to do. So having them as a partner, when we encounter our customers who are going down this journey, and they say, for example, ESG is a good example. Let's say they say, we want to understand the ESG state of these 1,000 companies, and which ones are doing better over time and which ones are doing worse over time, and why. I know if they were trying to attempt to do that in-house, they'd probably do a pilot. They probably wouldn't really get meaningful stuff out of it, and then they'd probably shelve the product. If I can introduce Lead Semantics into this process, the probability of it being successful is much, much higher.
Great. I feel like I've gotten a lot of value out of understanding the entire process with the Dow Jones Factiva, classifying and tagging all the documents from its network of partners, and how Lead Semantics takes that and extracts meaningful relationships and deciphers the context behind each document and how they're interrelated, so that the final consumer can see and make decisions based off of those relationships as to what are relevant concepts and which documents provide that information. So if I can just, I'd love to get your closing thoughts as to how you benefited from this partnership and where it's going to go from here. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like I said before, I mean, our benefit from this partnership is at Dow Jones, we don't do this. But we have customers who want to buy our data who do want to do this. So we really need to rely on partners like Lead Semantics to then go to the customer with the data set and the expertise and the technology to accomplish what the customers needed. So we rely on partners quite a bit from this. So this is it's not just a benefit for us, it's really necessary for our business.
Prasad, any benefits from figuring out how to manage the complexities of daily news sources?
Yeah. And one of the very heart of this relationship is that, as Ezra mentioned in one of his answers, I can't remember to which question, is because Dow Jones Factiva gives us this curated data set. We are not dealing with literally all the noise that is there out in the market. It is validated, high quality data. So it's garbage in, garbage out, as Ezra may have said. So it is. So we are already sitting on top of a very highly clean data. And for data science and natural language processing, natural language is already noisy and ambiguous to begin with. If you add all this additional noise, I mean, it kind of corrupts the entire process. It costs that much more. So we are sitting on literally already gold, and we are trying to add, like jewelry on top of it, let's say. So it's that type of value proposition. So anywhere we go to by ourselves to customers, we really insist on clean data. Otherwise, the real value of what we are able to produce cannot be that easily understood. we'll spin a lot of wheels, before we get to the final value. But with the Factiva, it gives us the chance to really produce the high quality value, high quality relationships, high quality knowledge, which literally guides them to make that next call, which usually is a decision to make. That's it. The analysts who are sitting on top of it. So we advise them to kind of look at Factiva new service if they don't already have.
Well, perfect. Thank you guys for taking the time out of your day for this conversation. I certainly learned a lot. I'll stop recording now.